Since the Industrial Revolution, there have been many scandals performed by automobile companies. However, Volkswagen's engineers have performed what seems to be one of the biggest scandals known to date. Known as the diesel dupe, Volkswagen's engineers have modified the software of their diesel vehicles to detect when the vehicle is being tested for emissions, causing the vehicle to output lower emission values. When the car detects that it's not being tested, however, it will output emissions of up to 40 times greater than the tested value. This has resulted in over 11 million cars being recalled, 56 premature deaths, and costs for Volkswagen of up to $18 billion worldwide. It all started on September 18, 2015, when the United States EPA filed a violation of the Clean Air Act against the automobile giant Volkswagen. The investigation into the emissions of turbocharged direct injection vehicles were brought into question when discrepancies were found between the European and US models of the car. The company's stock fell by one-third, the CEO resigned, and several other executives were suspended. Volkswagen's engineers had intentionally programmed their engines to behave differently once they detected that the emissions are being tested. This caused the cars to meet the regulatory levels, but in later reports, it was found that the car was emitting up to 40 times more emissions during real-world driving tests. Such programming was found in turbocharged direct injection engines that were produced from 2009 through 2015. Under the professional misconducts listed by the Professional Engineers Act, the actions violated include 72.2.b, as the increase in emissions is directly related to 56 premature deaths, and 72.2c, as the failure to act ethically was evident when Volkswagen built a system that can detect that the emissions are being tested, and when driving regularly, the vehicle would emit 40 times the legal limit of emissions. 72.2d as well as 72.2.f were also violated, as Volkswagen as a company has directly defied the bylaws and regulations in place around the world in order to pass the emission standards set forth, as well as senior management claims that the scandal was a result of several engineers and the upper level of management were not involved at all within the scandal. On top of this, 72.2G as well as 72.2J were also breached as well, as Volkswagen breached the act by violating sections of clause 77.1 and 77.8, which are discussed later, as well as clear that it is disgraceful to knowingly breach laws and statuses in place for the safety of not only the environment but also human health. The Professional Engineers Act Code of Ethics that were breached as well were 77.1 Fairness to the employer and clients of the employer, as Volkswagen engineers breached this clause when they were not fair with their claims and cheated their customers by selling them products which are not legally fit to be on the road, as well as 77.1.2 Fidelity to public needs, as Volkswagen was not acting in the interests of its customers nor the general public by breaching laws established to ensure the health and well-being of the population and environment. And lastly, 77.8, a practitioner shall maintain the honor and integrity of the practitioner's profession, and without fear or favor exposed before the proper tribunals unprofessional, dishonest, or unethical conduct by any other practitioner, as a scandal was brought forth by third-party investigations into the emissions produced by automobiles, not the engineers involved in the scandal, as it should have been. Volkswagen's emission scandal forced the Canadian government to conduct a thorough investigation into the affected vehicles. It very soon found to have violated the Canadian Environmental Protection Act with regards to Division 5, Section 153, which states, "No company shall apply a national emissions mark to any vehicle, engine, or equipment, sell any vehicle, engine, or equipment to which a national emissions mark has been applied, or import any vehicle, engine, or equipment unless records are maintained and furnished in the prescribed form and manner in relation to the design, manufacture, testing, and field performance of the vehicle, engine, or equipment." The breach of this act allowed for a class action lawsuit on behalf of all consumers who owned affected vehicles by the Canadian Environmental Protection Agency, who was the plaintiff, against Volkswagen Group Canada, who was the defendant. Volkswagen had a clear responsibility to not only its consumers, but all Canadian citizens to ensure that its vehicles were in compliance with all federal and provincial environmental laws and statutes. The use of an emission-defeating device to work around such laws is a direct breach of these regulations. The maximum fine that Volkswagen could now face under the Canadian Environmental Protection Act is up to $6 million for each vehicle that has the emission-defeating software installed, with approximately 100,000 vehicles being affected. This totals up to a massive $600 billion penalty for Volkswagen, just in Canada alone. Keep in mind that there were over 11 million vehicles affected worldwide. However, it is important to note that it is unlikely that the maximum penalty will be reached. It is up to the federal judges to determine the appropriate penalties bestowed. We firmly believe, based on the evidence provided, that the wrongdoings by Volkswagen was not only intentional, but an extremely unethical and disgraceful act. Volkswagen has misled both the general public and also its consumers into purchasing their products with the confidence that the proper laws and statutes were abided. As such, it should be the responsibility of Volkswagen to return to the consumers in full amount the purchased value of each vehicle if the consumer so wishes. If the consumer decides to keep the vehicle, Volkswagen shall be responsible for the repair and/or replacement of any defective or cheat parts as determined by the Environmental Protection Agency at no cost to the consumer.